You apologized for being upset that someone hurt you. Let that sink in. You were hurt, and somehow you ended up being the one saying sorry. If that sounds familiar, you are not weak, you are not crazy, and you're definitely not alone. Studies suggest that roughly 1 in 6 people will experience a significant relationship with someone who shows narcissistic traits. The most dangerous part of these relationships is that many people do not realize what is happening until years later. Today, we are going to look deeper than the usual explanations. We are going to explore the psychological mechanics of why narcissists can make you feel like you are the problem, why those tactics work, and what is happening in your brain when it does. By the end of this video, you may begin to recognize patterns that once felt confusing. And recognition is often the first step toward freedom. First, it is important to clear up a common misconception. A narcissist is not simply someone who takes too many selfies or enjoys attention. A narcissistic personality disorder is a clinically recognized condition listed in the DSM 5. Research suggests it affects a small percentage of the population. Although narcissistic traits can appear more widely in certain environments such as competitive workplaces or highly performative social spaces. For the purpose of this discussion, what matters is not only formal diagnosis. Some individuals may display strong narcissistic traits without ever receiving a diagnosis. Yet their behavior can still damage another person's sense of reality and emotional stability. There are generally two common patterns often discussed. The first is the grandiose narcissist. This is the personality most people imagine. They can appear confident, charming, and highly self-assured. They seek admiration constantly and often position themselves as exceptional. Early in a relationship, they may also make you feel exceptional. The second is the covert or vulnerable narcissist. This type can be harder to recognize. They may appear quiet or sensitive and sometimes portray themselves as the victim. Beneath that surface often exists the same core pattern: difficulty tolerating other people's needs or perspectives, taking priority over their own. Both patterns often share similar foundations, including limited empathy, an unstable sense of identity, and a strong need for control. Now, let's talk about the behaviors themselves. These patterns are rarely random. They tend to follow recognizable strategies. One of the most well-known is gaslighting. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation that causes someone to doubt their own perception of reality. It can sound like statements such as, "That never happened," "You are too sensitive, you're imagining things," or "You always twist my words." Over time, these repeated messages begin to erode confidence in your own memory and judgment. The term comes from the film Gaslight, where a husband manipulates his wife into believing she is losing her sanity by subtly altering elements of their environment and denying the changes. Researchers and therapists often describe gaslighting as a cycle. First, there is idealizer, where you feel valued and special. Then comes devaluation, where subtle criticism or distance appears. Finally, gaslighting reframes your reaction as the problem. When this happens repeatedly, the brain can begin trusting the other person's version of events more than its own. Another pattern often seen is love bombing, followed by withdrawal. At the beginning, the attention can feel overwhelming in a positive way. Frequent messages, intense affection, and declarations of deep connection can appear very quickly. This phase creates emotional investment. Then the warmth suddenly decreases. The person becomes distant or inconsistent. That contrast triggers a powerful psychological response known as intermittent reinforcement. The same principle explains why gambling can feel addictive. When rewards appear unpredictably, the brain becomes more motivated to chase them. In relationships, this means someone may try harder and harder to regain the earlier affection. Projection is another common tactic. This occurs when someone attributes their own behaviors or feelings to another person. Someone who is dishonest may accuse you of lying. Someone emotionally distant may claim you are uncaring. This protects their self image by shifting responsibility outward. Triangulation is another destabilizing strategy. It involves introducing another person into the dynamic in a way that creates insecurity. This might be referencing an ex partner, comparing you to someone else, or suggesting that another person understands them better. The goal is often to keep you uncertain and competing for approval.
Another pattern appears during arguments. Conversations can become circular and exhausting. Points are redirected or reframed repeatedly until the original concern disappears. Instead of resolving conflict, the discussion becomes about defending yourself. Therapists sometimes refer to this as the trap of constantly needing to justify, argue, defend, and explain. Understanding why these tactics work requires looking at the brain. One factor is trauma bonding. When cycles of affection and distress occur repeatedly with the same person, the brain forms a powerful attachment. Moments of comfort release bonding hormones, while conflict triggers stress hormones. This combination can create a strong emotional dependency that makes leaving feel extremely difficult. Another factor is cognitive dissonance. When someone you love behaves in harmful ways, your mind struggles to hold both realities at once. To reduce that internal tension, people often minimize the harm or assume they must be responsible for it. Over time, identity can also shift. Gradual criticism or pressure can lead someone to distance themselves from friends, interests, or personal values. The result is increasing dependence on the relationship itself. Research suggests that narcissistic traits can also be connected to deep psychological wounds often linked to early experiences with inconsistent attention, emotional neglect, or highly conditional approval. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it helps explain why empathy from others can become the doorway through which manipulation occurs. If any of this feels familiar, it may help to ask yourself a few reflective questions. Do you often apologize even when you are unsure what you did wrong? Do you feel unusually sensitive or anxious primarily within this relationship? Do you frequently replay conversations trying to understand how things shifted? Have you distanced yourself from friends or family since the relationship began? Do you feel more tension than peace, but still struggle to imagine leaving? Answering yes to some of these questions does not provide a diagnosis, but it may signal a pattern worth exploring with support. Healing often begins with awareness. Naming behaviors such as gaslighting can break the confusion surrounding them. Speaking with trusted friends or mental health professionals can help restore a clearer perspective when your internal sense of reality has been repeatedly questioned. Some therapists also recommend strategies like limiting emotional reactions in interactions that cannot immediately be avoided. Documentation of conversations and events can also help preserve clarity when memories are challenged or rewritten. Finally, many people find it helpful to recognize that part of the grief after such relationships is mourning the version of the person they believed existed during the early stages. That emotional loss is real, and acknowledging it can be part of recovery. If you have experienced dynamics like these, remember that questioning your reality does not mean you are broken. It means your mind has been trying to reconcile conflicting experiences. With time, support, and understanding, clarity can return.